In today's video, we will be recapping Sex and the City, Season 1, Episode 2. Carrie is typing away on her laptop, voice-overing about a dinner party Miranda attended with her new date, a sports agent named Nick, who once told her she had nice legs. During the dinner, Nick goes around the table asking everyone to name a classic movie star, living or dead, they'd like to sleep with. In the kitchen, Miranda tells two of the female partygoers how she met Nick, and they tell her they adore him except for one troubling issue. He has a thing for models. They recount all the times he'd bring his lady friends to dinner parties, and all they do was poke around their food and pout. At those dinners, Nick would ask everyone the same question at the table, which movie stars they'd like to sleep with, and the models never had good responses to those questions. Nick's two female friends challenged him to bring around a woman who can keep up her end of the conversation. They flat out told him they don't want any more models. So Nick agreed to test out their advice and brought Miranda to the next dinner party. Miranda just stares back at them in complete horror. During the cab ride home, Miranda confronts Nick about his alleged modelizing. He kind of shrugs and reminds her that she had a good time tonight, and she storms off angrily. The next day, Miranda tells Carrie about her date, as she wonders aloud what happens to regular women if guys are only willing to date models like Leonardo DiCaprio. At her computer, Carrie is writing about modelizers and explains that in most cities, models only exist on TV ads or billboards, but in New York City, they're everywhere. Later, the four friends gather at Carrie's place for dinner and whining about the unfairness having to compete with models. Miranda says that the culture promotes impossible standards of beauty. The conversation leads to Charlotte complaining about her thighs. Miranda hates her chin, and Carrie hates her nose. Samantha just stares back at them, silently, not having any complaints about her body. Carrie tells Charlotte and Miranda that their insecurities are silly and that they shouldn't be intimidated by unreal fantasies. Two models then tell viewers that guys who fall for beautiful women are usually slimeballs who just want to get laid. Carrie is hanging out with a male friend named Barkley, and like Nick, he's shallow, who thinks that models are the only type of women a man should sleep with. He's also a pretend artist who maintains an extravagant lifestyle, living in a Soho loft despite never having sold a painting. Barkley gives insight to Carrie about how he's able to sleep with so many beautiful women. He then shows her a bunch of TV stacked together and turns them on. We see multiple sex videos of him with different models. He explains that he likes to videotape his conquests. For a few seconds, Carrie doesn't know what to say and appears intrigued before asking him if he has a light. She then meets up with her friend Skipper, who gushes about how much he likes Miranda. Unfortunately, she won't return any of his phone calls and asks her to call Miranda on the spot. Carrie dials Miranda's number and thankfully gets her answering machine. Skipper grabs the phone and leaves a rambling message about how badly he wants her to call him back. Carrie then realizes that maybe it was a terrible idea to fix up her friends. Later, Stanford gets Carrie into the hottest fashion show in town, and he brings her backstage so she can check out his client, Derek, the world's biggest underwear model. Stanford starts fawning all over Derek, telling him what a big star he's going to be. Stanford and Carrie then make their way to the front row, where Samantha is already sitting. Barkley suddenly appears in the row behind them and asks Carrie if they're going to the after party. She says she's not sure. Samantha turns around to check him out, likes what she sees, and says, "Of course we are." Carrie then gives Samantha the heads up that Barkley is a modelizer, but she looks intrigued and takes it as a personal challenge. She turns around and he winks at her. Carrie's at the after party when Mr. Big appears. He tells her he's been reading her column, calling it cute, then asks where does she write her stories. Carrie tells him that she usually writes in her apartment, as well as a nearby cafe. She continues that she's currently writing about douchebag men who only date models, and asks him if he has any thoughts on the matter. He shrugs and says, before adding that some men just like sleeping with beautiful women. Suddenly, a woman walks over and stands beside Big. Carrie stares her up and down and politely tells her she was great in the fashion show. Big tells Carrie he'll see her around and heads off with the model. Samantha tells Carrie that Barkley has been coming on to her and wonders if he thinks she's a model. Carrie advises her not to engage with him since he has a thing for secretly taping himself having sex with women, but this only piques Samantha's interest more. Carrie decides to leave the party. She hails a cab, and suddenly, Derek appears beside her and asks her where she's going. She tells him she's heading home. He further explains that he doesn't like going to parties, and he wants to go somewhere quiet. She considers the idea of going home with a hot model, and agrees. After they reach her apartment, Carrie asks Derek if he shouldn't be spending the night with a model from the show, but Derek insists he never dates models and thinks they're stupid. The two enjoy a glass of wine while relaxing on her bed, and he reveals how self-conscious he is about everything. He tells her he wants to move back to Iowa, become a cop, and have kids. He lays on her bed and complains about how lonely it gets in the city. This perplexes her, and she couldn't understand how such a beautiful person could be so lonely. Miranda is in a convenience store buying cat food when she runs into Skipper. He asks her why she hasn't returned any of his phone calls and says he thought they had a connection. She responds and said maybe it would be better if he wouldn't rather go out with a woman his own age, but he calls her luminous. Miranda perks up at the description and invites him to come back to her apartment. Meanwhile, Samantha got her validation by having sex with Barkley. He agrees to make an exception and turns on the camera. A newly energized Samantha gets more into the sex, staring straight into the lens. The next morning, Stanford calls Carrie and asks her if she knows what happened to Derek last night. She hands Derek the phone, and Stanford has a freakout and orders Derek to put Carrie back on the phone. He reacts, thinking they slept together, but she assures him they didn't, and just spent the night talking. Stanford breathes a sigh of relief and takes it as an encouraging sign that his hot client might be gay. We get a final testimonial from Nick. He whines to viewers about how all the models he's been with lately are tiring him out, and that he feels like an old man at 34. Carrie's in the cafe near her apartment, typing on her computer. Mr. Big then enters, and she perks up at the sight of him. She tells him hi, and he tells her he's been thinking a lot about what she said about modelizers. He says, no matter how many beautiful women there are in the city, you just want to be with the one who makes you laugh. This makes Carrie happy. Mr. Big says goodbye as she continues writing her column. That's it for today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.